Frederick Holland and Brian Murphy. This will be our final segment. So after this, for the day, we will have public comment for those who wish to comment publicly afterwards. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Honorable Assembly Member Ruskin and Senator Negrete McLeod, and members of the Joint Legislative Committee. My name is Sylvia Hurtado. My experience in education began as an undergraduate and then professional and college admissions. I'm currently the director of the Higher Education Research Institute at UCLA. I have 5 years of service on BORS, which is the Faculty Senate Committee charged with the development and oversight of admissions policy at the University of California, and I'm currently chair of BORS. The master plan was written as an ideal set of principles that embraced maintaining both selective as well as broad access higher education in the state of California. While it was successful in increasing educational opportunity, today's realities of college admission are far beyond what was initially envisioned. The master plan did not anticipate that a demand for post-secondary education would rise, particularly at selective institutions, and that the disparities in educational opportunity between racial ethnic populations would be sustained. The master plan, while good at differentiation, is also silent on collaboration, something that will be necessary in an era of budget constraints. Now, let me begin by different components of this. I'll start talking about the high demand of access to UC. Applications have risen dramatically to the UC system, and despite projected declines in the number of high school graduates, they continue to rise. Two of the campuses, Berkeley and UCLA, have become among the most selective institutions in the country. At the same time, the UC system remains an engine of social mobility, accommodating the highest percentage of low-income students than other public institutions across the country. Both UCLA and Berkeley enroll the highest percentage of low-income students for their level of selectivity. This is possible because campuses use a broad range of criteria in selecting students, which I will describe in a moment. When demand is high, we have also been able to identify and accommodate top students. Thus, in the last 8 years, we show steady increases in applicants as well as admits. The opening of the Merced campus has assisted with increased demand. However, in years when enrollment constraints were imposed because of the state budget in 2004 and 2009, we have seen a reduction in freshman admits that also results in declines in low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented minorities. The state budget constraints also place limits on current projections for enrollment growth at UC that prevent closing the gaps between groups in a high-demand context for UC access. At the same time as this high demand increased, there was a concerted effort to impose race-neutral policies that hampered the ability to close long-standing gaps among underrepresented populations in California, at UC in particular. While the Senate opposed these, academic Senate opposed these, in 1998 we worked with the regions to issue Eligibility in the Local Context, or ELC, a new program requiring campuses to extend admission to the top 4% of students in every high school, California high school. This proved to be a successful program in recruiting students who had not previously considered UC as an option. After high schools submit student transcripts for evaluation of A through G coursework by UC, students received a letter recognizing their accomplishments, informing them of the final steps they must take to be guaranteed admission. ELC students admitted to UC show high GPAs, persistence rates, and high levels of academic and civic engagement. BORS views the ELC program as a significant success because of this. The ELC guarantee will expand from 4 to 9% of every high school in 2012.
What was the year? Was that 96?
That was 98 when it was first instituted. ELC was first instituted. So now we're going to expand it from 4 to 9% in 2012. Spawned by the passage of 209, faculty subsequently adopted comprehensive review processes in selective admissions to achieve the Regent's mandate of inclusive excellence. That is, a resolution to enroll a student body that demonstrates high academic achievement or exceptional personal talent, and that encompasses the broad diversity of backgrounds characteristic of California. These processes follow 14 guidelines by boards in the evaluation of students within the context of opportunity in their schools, and information in the students' files about their academic and personal accomplishments. Comprehensive review processes identify students who strive for excellence and exceed the opportunity structures in their high schools, exhibit exceptional leadership or talent in the arts or science, or make extraordinary civic contributions. Each campus uses these comprehensive review process before a final decision is rendered in admissions. Both the comprehensive review using broad criteria and ELC helped to not only identify new reserves of talent for UC, but also to restore some of the diversity lost in the aftermath of Proposition 209. The master plan has set the 12.5% standard to assure UC selects from only among the top students in the state. However, the authority was left to the university and, more importantly, the faculty to determine eligibility and also the criteria by which students would be selected. To this day, UC has admitted all eligible students to some campus, but this is only because we have adjusted an index, the mechanism by which we define eligibility. Instead of simply adjusting an index to narrow the number of eligible students, the faculty thought we should be encouraging many more students to take the right courses, become college ready, and aim high. After several years of study, the faculty at UC introduced a new eligibility policy passed by the Regents in 2008 and to take effect in 2012. A key principle of the master plan was to extend opportunity. In the same way, the reform of eligibility will cast a wider net in the goal of identifying more high-achieving students for admission to UC. The reform does several things. First, it eliminates subject tests as a significant barrier to eligibility. Second, it extends the guarantee of admission in every California high school to the top 9%, which is estimated to double the number of ELC students in most schools and maps directly onto demographics of the state. Third, it allows more students to present their best case in comprehensive review based on their academic and personal accomplishments. So in a sense, then, what does the reform do? It gives more students a fair shot at UC, encourages students to aim high, and allows campuses to use broad criteria to select the top students. Extraordinary achievement will be rewarded, particularly in the light of the challenges students face within the context of opportunity in their schools. Today, selection of admission at UC is driven by, first, the realities of institutional capacity based on enrollment targets that are driven by the state budget. Second, the applicant pool, which determines how selective each campus becomes and also how competitive the pools are. Third, the review process that includes broad criteria of academic and personal accomplishment. This is necessary to achieve both diversity and excellence at UC. And fourth, student preparation. By far the biggest disparity for high school graduates in terms of preparation for UC and CSU is the ability to enroll and be successful in A through G coursework in high schools. Currently, teachers submit their courses for A through G approval, and UC reviews an average of 18,000 courses per year and works with teachers to improve their courses to meet the standards for college-level preparation. Most recently, a significant effort was also made to assist in the development and review of career technical education courses to meet A through G requirements. In 2000, only 258 CTE courses met A through G requirements. Now, 7,650 CTE courses meet A through G requirements. Creating more A through G courses in high schools based on rigorous curriculum standards is really a top priority. But the notion is what we have to do when you're really doing selective admissions is you also have to really think about diversity, because diversity has to be among your leaders in the state. And there are significant disparities in the school. A report from UCLA's Institute on Democracy, Education, and Access shows that there's a consistent counselor shortage in high schools, fewer A through G courses, and shortages of qualified teachers in schools that serve large numbers of African American, Chicano, and Native American students. As I stated earlier, the original master plan was hailed as an elegant way of dividing function and resources for a growing population that demanded access. The demand for access remains unabated, and it seems the plan should identify areas for greater collaboration where segments can develop more effective pathways to moving more California students toward baccalaureate completion. In the area of transfer admissions, I offer 3 examples of intersegmental cooperation. The first is ASSIST is an online articulation tool. The community colleges, CSU, and UC have successfully collaborated over the last 25 years to provide detailed course articulating information to prospective transfer students. Now, this information is online. More recently, the segments have agreed upon a vision for a reinvigorated ASSIST online tool that will streamline the work of course articulation and enhance student advisement. This is just one example of how technology and collaboration across the segments can occur to really make and provide information. There are thousands and thousands of users of this online initiative. There's also a streamlining initiative where faculty in 2006 and 2007 developed transfer paths to streamline them and easily communicate essential lower division preparation for students wishing to transfer to any UC in the top 20 majors. That takes a lot of work to actually review all the curriculum and do so. Finally, ICAS, which you heard from Henry Powell this morning, established as competencies for college success. And over the last 20 years, the community colleges, the CSU and UC have regularly come together to develop academic competency statements in a number of core academic areas, including academic literacy, mathematics, lab science, language, and other than English, that provides specific guidance to schools regarding the academic competencies expected for incoming students. Not only do these competency statements spell out the content knowledge expected of these students, they also detail the skills and experiences that faculty believe will contribute to a student's success at our institutions. In sum, what I want to say essentially is the master plan did not anticipate many of the things that we're living through today. The most important, I think, is really rethinking not just differentiation, but collaboration. So I think it was very good at sort of separating everything, but now that we're in an era of budget constraints, we really have to think very clearly how we can collaborate, use the resources, the knowledge bases in each of the segments to work together to create what we need, a very effective transportation system to move students through towards a baccalaureate. These are just a few examples of cooperation and sharing of resources for student access. Thank you for your time. I'll take questions later.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mitchell, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. My name is Horace Mitchell, and I'm the president at California State University, Bakersfield. And I would tell you that I have been both an observer of the workings of the master plan for higher education and also involved in it in some ways over the last 30 years, including time spent as a vice chancellor at UC Irvine and UC Berkeley. Thank you for allowing this time for me to provide a CSU perspective on reflections on universal access. CSU is committed to universal access, which we define as making sure all students who want to seek a college degree know what they need to be prepared, know what they need to meet college requirements, have an opportunity to enroll, and are able to succeed when they get on campus. The CSU system, as you know, is the largest and most diverse university system in the nation and the university of choice for the majority of first-generation students. 56% of CSU's 450,000 students are students of color. As Dr. Powell said this morning, the master plan was a historic commitment of California to Californians, the ideal of universal access. And since we live in a constantly changing society and economic environment, it is necessary that there are periodic reviews such as this of the California Master Plan and updating as necessary as California changes and the demands for higher education change. The motto of the CSU is working for California. I want to spend a few minutes talking about how the CSU is working to fulfill its commitment to the ideals of the master plan, even in this period of reduced resources. I want to do this from the standpoint of leadership, starting with the CSU Board of Trustees. First of all, the CSU Board of Trustees 2 years ago led a year-long strategic planning effort that involved all 23 campuses. That plan, entitled Access to Excellence, laid out a set of goals that included not only providing access to students, but also making sure that they had access to excellent academic programs and student support services. The Board of Trustees also adopted what is referred to as a facilitating graduation initiative, which is intended to increase graduation rates on all of our campuses. It requires that each campus report annually on 22 strategies that have been laid out by the Board of Trustees that are contained in that initiative. At its meeting last week, the Board of Trustees expanded its graduation initiative by focusing on closing the achievement gap that exists among students from different groups in terms of graduation rates. There are required metrics, benchmarks, and reporting periods. I said a minute ago that the master plan needs to be updated from time to time. An example of this, again related to the leadership of the CSU Board of Trustees, was the observation that we were not getting enough individuals educated at the doctoral level in the area of education. And so there was a very strong effort, as many of you are familiar with, of the CSU to begin having the opportunity to offer the independent doctorate. And initially, the primary rationale that was presented for why that shouldn't happen was that it was, quote, inconsistent with the master plan. And again, the point here is simply that I appreciate what you're doing now in terms of reviewing the master plan. In addition to the leadership of the Board of Trustees, Chancellor Reed and the 23 presidents are also actively involved in making these commitments real. You've already heard this morning about a number of programs, and I won't repeat in depth some things that were in my presentation, but I do want to mention several particular programs. One of which is the Early Assessment Program. And this is important because before the start of the Early Assessment Program, about 4 years ago, what would happen is that high school students would come to our campuses, take the placement test in English and math, and if they found that they were not proficient, then they'd have to go to take remedial courses before enrolling in courses that would count toward their degree. With the Early Assessment Program, students can take an optional set of questions on the California Standards Test in the 11th grade, and they get the results of that before they start their senior year. And if they test below the level of proficiency in terms of readiness for college-level work in math and English, they have their senior year to take care of that. And we have some computer-assisted programs to assist them, as well as specific recommendations about the kinds of courses they need to take to be ready. Another example, and there was discussion this morning about the need for better articulation with community colleges. In the CSU, over the last several years, there has been the development of what is called the lower division transfer pattern. Not fully done yet, but done across a number of majors and a number of campuses. And the intent here is to make sure that students at community colleges take the sort of ideal 60 units that will transfer directly into the particular major that they want to have at the particular campus that they want to attend. What that does is eliminate the need for taking courses that don't count toward their degree. Now, if they want to do that, that's fine. But if their intent is to stay on target, this lower division transfer pattern is a support to make that happen. We've also developed a poster that many of you have seen called How to Get to College. And it starts with the 6th grade, and it lays out exactly what it is that students need to take in terms of courses and other areas of preparation to be ready for college. And that poster is not only in English, but it is in 5 other languages as well, so that parents have the opportunity to have that information and not just the students. You heard this morning about the Troops to College initiative, which the CSU has embraced and is very involved with. We also have an initiative called the Road to College, which is a partnership with AT&T, where last year they had a bus that covered many areas of the state and provided information about how it is that students could be prepared in terms of information and readiness for college. Now, in addition to these general initiatives, and there are many more that I just don't have time to go into right now, the CSU has also focused on serving underserved communities. In fact, at the meetings of the CSU presidents, there is a group called the President's Committee on Underserved Communities. And this is a context in which we pay particular attention to the extent to which the CSU as a system is responding to the needs of all segments of our community. And as a part of the work of the President's Committee on Underserved Communities, we have developed particular initiatives that are targeted to various underserved groups, and the nature of those initiatives relate to the particular populations. Example, one initiative you might have heard of is called Super Sunday. And in particular, this is an initiative with African American churches, which is intended to provide information relative to early preparation for college. And we started this 4 years ago with 11 churches in the Los Angeles area and 13 churches in the Bay Area. This year, Chancellor Reed laid out a goal for us to reach 100 churches. And we already have the setup in terms of the schedule that will achieve that this year. With respect to Hispanic students in particular, we have a partnership with a group called the Parent Institute for Educational Quality, or PK, and they're involved with helping parents be better advocates for their children in a school setting, including helping parents understand what it is that their kids need to know and learn in order to be successful. And that partnership is funded both by the CSU and through PK. We also have a partnership with HACU, the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. Additional initiatives as well with Native American communities, and we can provide that information. And in fact, I want to make sure that you have, you should have been handed a handout that shows, thank you, online links to all the programs that I'm mentioning so that you can have your staffs get additional information about each of these programs.
Dr. Mitchell, just one question. These programs you're mentioning, the Super Sunday and then these latter two, are they for parents and students before admission to college?
Absolutely, yes. They are part of our early preparation initiatives. There was discussion this morning about the need to focus not only on the lack of resources, but being more efficient and doing things with the available resources. So I just want to mention that within the CSU, there is an expectation that presidents are involved in generating additional resources amounting to at least 10% of the state general fund allocation. And that is done through fundraising, through grants, some of which support student academic programs, and through various public-private partnerships. And so we're not simply waiting, but are trying to do some things that move us along. And then finally, let me say that as we talk about universal access, if I were to write universal access on the board, I would write 2 terms above it and then 2 below it. The 2 that I would write above it would be academic preparation, of course, because you can't have universal access without academic preparation, and that has to do with the quality of schools and academic programs and teachers and student commitment to learning. The second item that I'd put there is knowledge of post-secondary options. And if students don't know what is available, they don't have the information about financial aid and such, they'll assume that they can't move forward, and we don't want them to have that sense. And then below universal access, I would add, as we've talked about already, campus support that is necessary to assist students. And of course, the goal is not simply access, but true access involves graduation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. McKinney?
Yes. My name is Larry McKinney. I am the president of Simpson University in Redding, California. Chairman Ruskin and members of the Joint Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education, I want to thank you for the privilege of presenting a bit of what's happening at Simpson University, as well as the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. And I was hoping that Assemblyman Nielsen would have returned, because he has been a tremendous champion for higher education in the North State.
Yeah,
and actually
it was co-chair Senator McLeod and I have invited you here after talking with Assembly Member Nielsen.
Quite aware of that, and I wanted to say thank you very much for suggesting that I come and represent our university. Maybe just a few brief comments in terms of private or independent higher education, not just in California, but in the U.S., to create a bit of a context. This morning there was a bit of a dichotomy that was made between not-for-profit higher education and the proprietary sector. And I think we understand that. If you think only of the not-for-profit colleges and universities, and that certainly includes the community colleges, the CSUs, the UCs, but also private institutions. In the U.S., of the over 4,000 accredited degree-granting institutions, about 38% of those are private. In fact, let me break it down a little bit further. About 22% of them are faith-based or religiously affiliated. And AICCU is a classic example of that. There are 75 member schools within the state, and 33 of them have some type of religious affiliation. With that in mind, one of my hopes today is to eradicate a false perception with respect to private higher education, and it would be this: that private or independent education is elite, expensive, and in some cases, narrowly sectarian. And I hope that using Simpson University as a case study will help to erase some of those erroneous notions or ideas. First of all, just a little bit of background about the university that I represent. Simpson University was founded in 1921. It's a private Christian university of liberal arts, professional studies, accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, also accredited by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, recognized by the California Board on Behavioral Sciences, and I'm very pleased to say exactly 2 weeks from today, the California Board of Registered Nursing will be on our campus. And we are hoping that there will be a favorable outcome as far as recognition in that particular area as well. We have currently 25 undergraduate majors, also graduate programs in education, counseling, psychology fields, and also theology. And the newest programs that we've introduced within the last several years would include nursing, outdoor leadership, teaching English to speakers of other languages, and ROTC. New graduate programs will be an MA in counseling psychology and a Master of Divinity. Simpson University relocated 20 years ago from San Francisco to the cosmopolitan community of Redding. And believe me, when that move was made, there were a lot of people that said, "Are you crazy?" In reality, probably the most strategic decision that was ever made in the almost 90 years of history for Simpson, because our enrollment is multiplied by 6 times. Beautiful 85-acre campus that was developed from scratch in 1989 And our mission statement reads as follows: as a Christ-centered learning community, Simpson University develops students in mind, faith, and character to influence the world through leadership, scholarship, and service. In case you're not aware of some of the demographic realities of the true North State, let me give you a little bit of background about Redding and Shasta County. Redding is a city of 92,000 people, one of the few populated areas in Northern California. The surrounding county has only 183,000 people. The median family income tends to be $12,000 to $15,000 below the average state figures. Unemployment continues to run about 5% higher than state and national averages. And higher education patterns, in terms of completing whether it's an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a master's degree, tends to fall far behind state and national averages. And maybe anecdotally I would mention there are probably more pickup trucks in Redding than there are traditional vehicles. On occasion you might even find a dog in the back. Now, with that background in mind, what about the demographics of Simpson University? This past fall we had just under 1,200 students. Our enrollment for the year will be about 1,400. And by the way, there are hundreds of liberal arts colleges, private institutions in the U.S. that are in that enrollment range, 1,000 to 2,000, maybe 3,000 students. 79% of our traditional undergraduates come from California. If you include graduate programs and continuing studies, 90% of our students come from California. However, having said that, we are still represented from 25 different states, and are you ready for this? 35 different countries. So there is very much of an international flavor on our campus. We have students from 30 different denominations or faith traditions. That's why I say we are not highly sectarian. 25% of our students come from ethnically diverse backgrounds. However, if you exclude the continuing studies program, which services largely people in the Redding area, about 1/3 of our traditional undergraduate students are ethnically diverse, more than 3 times higher than what the ethnic diversity would be in that particular part of Northern California. So our university has been able to bring a rich, diverse flavor to Redding and the surrounding community. 31% of our students are first-generation college students. And by the way, I happen to be a first-generation college student myself. So my heart goes out to students who have that kind of a background. 47% of our students come from homes where the joint family income is less than $40,000. 94% of our students receive some type of financial aid. Within our traditional undergraduate population, over 99% of them receive financial aid. And this one is very important to keep in mind. 45% of our California resident students receive the Cal Grant. An even higher percentage receive the Pell Grant. And one other thing that's worth noting, in light of some comments earlier this morning, 35% of our students are transfer students. And the primary feeder is the community college system. Our sister institution just a mile away, Shasta College, one of the CCs, the president commonly says to me, "You are the #1 school in terms of where our students go to when they finish their studies at Shasta College." What I'm trying to say is there's not this deep divide, at least in Northern California, between the private or the independent college, i.e. Simpson University, and the community college population. Educational outcomes related to our 20 years in Redding, California. More than 7,000 students have completed either a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. I should tell you that the only higher education institutions in Redding are Shasta College, which is a community college. National University has an extension site there, which, by the way, National University is a private institution. It's not proprietary. And Simpson University, and a terrific relationship between the 3 schools. But in our 20 years, more than 7,000 graduates. In fact, 2,000 plus of those graduates have completed their master's degree in education. We are a primary feeder for public and private schools in the North State. More than 2,500 students have earned their bachelor's degree through the Degree Completion Program. We call it ASPIRE. We've had approximately 1,500 students in the last 15 years who have been involved in international or cross-cultural service-related teams. Last year, we were recognized by the President's Higher Education Community Service for our exemplary involvement in the community as far as giving back. And this is my own perception, but I believe that we have a very strong relationship with local churches, service organizations, businesses, hospitals, schools, city and county government. What I commonly refer to as a healthy town and gown relationship. In conclusion, Simpson University, I hope, can be a bit of a case study for what's happening with other private colleges and universities in the state of California. Most are not elite. They are not too expensive, or at least are affordable because forms of financial aid, and certainly are not narrowly sectarian. Simpson University continues to be deeply, deeply committed, passionate when it comes to issues of access and affordability as we serve a growing student body. This would not be possible without the generous support of the state of California through the Cal Grant. May I repeat that one more time? This is important. This would not be possible without the generous support the state of California provided through the Cal Grant. And so I want to thank you for the critical role that you play in enabling Simpson University to carry out its mission of influencing the world through leadership, scholarship, and service. Thank you for assisting university and being a major educational contributor to Redding and the beautiful North State.
Thank you. I've been to your area quite a few times.
Continue to come back again.
Mr. Holland, please.
Thank you. I'm not sure I can follow the passion of Dr. McKinney here, but I will do my best. My name is Frederick Holland, and I am the Executive Director of West Coast University, the Ontario campus. I am part of a 6-chain system in Southern California. We have campuses in Ontario, Los Angeles, and Anaheim. I'm also the immediate past president of CAPS, California Association of Private Post-Secondary Schools, so I am here representing our sector at this time. I'd like to thank you all for allowing us to have an opportunity just to speak before the committee. It's an honor for us to come and present our case. As you're not aware, I am a first-generation college grad, as Dr. McKinney is. I'm also a product of the CSU system. I did my undergrad work at Cal State San Bernardino, did my graduate work at the University of Redlands, which was private. But I've worked in private post-secondary for the last...
My area, folks, just in case.
Yes. She was at our grand opening, so I do know Senator McLeod. Sorry. I've worked in private post-secondary for 20 years, and when I first got into the industry, it was different for me. I had come up through traditional university, had the same plans for my children to go through the traditional track. And then when I got into private post-secondary, I started to see a different student. I saw a different segment. I saw individuals that would have tried the traditional route and it didn't work for them, whether it was scheduling, whether it was family demands, whether it was lack of a high school diploma, but it didn't work for them. And they would come into our doors in droves looking for a career education, a technical education, something where I could get a skill so I could go to work. And that seemed to work for so many people. Our industry basically is home to 2,000 private post-secondary and nonprofit institutions in this state. We enroll approximately 400,000 students per year. We produce about 200,000 graduates into the state. The non-traditional students at our school are typically older. They come to us on a part-time basis. They do use Title IV funds. They use a Cal Grant. They use student loans. But then the rest of the funds they must do on their own. So we are not a drain on the state budget, so to speak. The students that for many of these students, public education just did not work out for them. So when we ask that as you are considering access, that you give private post-secondary an opportunity to show what we do for the state. one of the things that I was reading through the master plan, and this is somewhat old, but one of the comments was the students who have been served least well in our public schools, colleges, and universities are largely students from low-income families and students of color. They also make up an even greater proportion of California's increasing population. We must extend to them the same degree of educational promise that has been provided to the generations of California students that preceded them. Numerous studies have been done that point out how important it is that California's economy, one of the top economies in the world, must have a skilled and educated workforce if our state is to be successful in the global competition that we are currently engaged. Underneath this larger generalization are other studies that show that occupations requiring post-secondary career training will continue to show significant growth through 2014 in California. Allied health, including nursing, which is something my school specializes in, information technology, transportation, professional, and numerous other occupational fields must obtain more employees that have been trained in very specific skills if our business and employer community are to be successful. The campus that I currently work at, West Coast University, Ontario, offers 3 programs. We have an associate's degree in nursing, we have a Bachelor of Science in nursing, and we have a Bachelor of Arts in business with a healthcare concentration. So we're all allied health primarily, the nursing field. I get 500 applications every 10 weeks for my nursing program. 500. I can only accept 90. We have grown from a school of 30 students in November of 2008 to 530 students in February of 2010, all in the nursing program alone. We try to provide the need which our sector so desperately, our economy so desperately needs, by helping to bridge the gap between traditional and a skill set. And the same thing goes for the sister schools in our industry, such as those that offer medical assisting, dental assisting, massage therapy, information technology. Our sector exists because within our state, the system is not set up to fill the void. And that's what we do. We fill that void. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. You've heard a lot of speeches and a lot of words today. I just want to thank you for the opportunity for our sector to be present. I hope that as we go forward with this master plan, that you would give us an opportunity to sit at the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Murphy, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to... is this on?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. You've asked us to reflect on the question of access. I think it's appropriate that you start with the question of access, since it is the particular genius of the master plan, the remarkable and historic claim that the many should have access to higher education. I think that your work over the next several months is framed by a fundamental contradiction. It's a contradiction that predates the recession but is sharpened by it. There is, it seems to me, a deep and abiding contradiction between the needs of the state for higher education and the capacity of the multiple systems to deliver it. With all due respect to my colleagues who come from the private and smaller institutions, the order of magnitude of our capacity problem dwarfs the capacity of the 5 systems represented here to meet it under the current regime. I want simply to emphasize the degree to which, at least in the public sector, the 3 systems were from the beginning understood to relate to one another and have an interdependency with one another, and use the example of what we are living through right now to understand some of that dependency and some of the threats that are inside the current passage. You will recall again that the master plan combines 2 radically different concepts of access. On the one hand, the most narrow and elite access to a public research university in the United States, the University of California. On the other hand, the most democratic and open access to higher education in the entire world, to the community colleges. And the CSU in the middle, with about the same level of access of many other public Research One universities in the United States, 1/3 of the graduates. Those two very different systems, a relatively narrow access and then wide open democratic access. All of the conversations that any of us have here at this meeting or elsewhere about increased access to information, about increased articulation, about increased equity in the access, cannot change the fundamental mathematics if the seats are not there. So what I'd like to use is my own example simply as a momentary example. University of California and the CSU have publicized dramatically and well the degree to which their resources constrain their capacity to meet the needs of the students who might seek to come to them. San Jose State University in my own area was instructed to decrease its enrollments by some 3,000 students because they had overrolled beyond what the state was capable of paying. We, who are among the 9 community colleges in the broader South Bay area, found ourselves this last fall then the recipients of 4 streams of students, those who might in any event come to us, those who came to us from the University of California, those who came from the CSU, and those who came to us from an economy that was imploding. The result was is at the beginning of the fall, De Anza enrolled 24,500 students. And we had on waiting lists 13,400 names. Those 13,400 names represented 9,000 persons, because many of them were on multiple lists in a desperate effort to get their way in. Of those, 2,300 students got not one course that they sought.
Not one?
Not one course. The other 5,000 some odd got at least one. The point being is that at exactly the time when my institution has made a major commitment to reach out to the communities most in need in our region, at exactly the time when the UC is trying to work with its eligibility criteria to reach out to a broader diversity of our people, at exactly the time the CSU is trying to broaden its connection to K-12, at exactly that time we have no capacity to serve those who come to us. Our fall enrollment over the last 3 years has shown a 77% increase in first-time to college Latino enrollment, a 30% increase of first-time to college enrollment of African Americans, a 30% increased enrollment of first-time to college Filipino students. Those students come disproportionately from low-income, immigrant, poor, and significantly underemployed families. They now find themselves competing with much more highly skilled students who know how to job the system and get in the front of the line. The pressures on any of our community college campuses are thus intensified by the multiplicity of cutbacks across the entire system, not uniquely to ourselves. At our place, we cut 5% out of our curriculum. Due to the financial cutbacks, that's 300 courses. We cut 300 courses, our enrollment went up 2%. Big debate on campus is whether in lieu of chairs it was okay for students to bring yoga mats perhaps and sit in the back, and how many could you stack in and would the fire marshal notice? We have faculty who are teaching 60, 70, 80 students where the class should hold 35 or 40. The students where we cannot increase enrollment size because of quality, English as a second language at 23-1, nursing, where we receive 4,500 students for every $500 for each student. It costs us $13,000 to educate that student. So interior to each campus, campus after campus after campus, the same drama is played out. Interior to that, we do our best. We've added transfer sections. We've decreased physical education, which was only about 6% of our curriculum anyway. And just as a sidebar, we do have a marginal preference that we be allowed to govern our curriculum rather than the legislative analyst, or perhaps others. We are doing our best to meet the multiple needs of our people, but there simply is a limit. I have as many people on waiting lists for chemistry, 70% as many as are actually enrolled, and I haven't got labs to put them in even if we had the faculty. our numbers for the nurses, we accept about 30 a quarter. We have 200 fully qualified students who've completed all prerequisites who apply each quarter. And among the 170 who don't get in, I'm sure there's some flying down to Ontario to see if they can get into his queue, but then they find there are 500 applying for 90. Slightly better odds. The heart of this system that you are charged with to review is that tension between, or one might hope, reciprocity between, democratic access and completion at fine universities. At the heart of that is transfer. To the degree to which the transfer system works, the democratic promise functions. To the degree to which it is fractured by the inability of our senior brothers and sisters to accept our graduates, to that degree it cannot function. So what's played out at Bakersfield and every CSU campus is hire applicants than they've ever had before, knowing they can't accept them, and the local community colleges knowing they don't have place for them. The same on every campus at the CSU. The fact that you have a wider applicant pool doesn't change the number of seats you have to give. Then you could claim at the end of the year that you were more selective because you turned more people away. In a system in which status is determined by the quality of the people you turn away, rather than the quality of those you graduate. So the system is in tension and turmoil because of this fundamental contradiction. Let me address 4 separate parts to this, and then quiet up a little. First of all, you will, I think, have to engage 2 questions around capacity. Again, if you're thinking beyond this year's budget or the immediacy of the recession. The first simply is the long-term need for the state of California to increase by several 100,000 places space for our people to go to higher ed. With all due respect, that needn't always be campuses, but it cannot be imagined to be all online. Because the fundamental core of what we do is not the building, it's the faculty and the counselors and the staff who create a community with our students. Online courses take the same faculty and they cost just the same. You can save yourself capital cost and you cannot save yourself operating costs to any degree that makes any long-term sense. Secondly, the cost of education is obviously a barrier to long-term access. Without financial aid, and I'm not talking just about this year's drama with the Cal Grants, without financial aid, the democratic promise cannot be met. Third, the cost of textbooks and materials for education is a dramatic drag on access. You have a wonderfully ingenious piece of legislation, parenthetically, 1178, which proposes a novel idea, taxing offshore tax havens, and then, to make it revenue neutral, the relief of sales tax from textbooks. Students who pay $150 for a textbook would dearly love relief from that sales tax. I applaud the effort. At the same time, we all know we need the greater development of open educational resources so that our students are not held hostage to the textbook companies. So the long-term access to education will depend not just on the facilities and the men and women who teach, but also the materials that allow us to teach and to learn. Finally, having just talked positively about your bill, I have to say honestly that there isn't deep enthusiasm around the notion that the community colleges could solve this problem by offering bachelor's degrees. Since were you to ask me to offer a bachelor's degree, you would simply simultaneously be asking me to identify who I wasn't going to educate at the other end. It's not about some dramatic cost, some dramatic increase, as if you could get a bachelor's degree for $4,500, which is what you, again, compensate the community colleges. What then would we do with basic skills, developmental education, all of those things that the community colleges provide so that people can, in fact, get a BA? There are many community colleges, by the way, who have joint relations with CSUs in particular to offer a bachelor's degree, and we offer a bachelor's degree on our campus in a partnership with a university. but it's their degree. You know, they offer it. But frankly, we're in a conversation literally yesterday about the availability of rooms. Under the enrollment pressure we've got, can we spare the room for the bachelor's degree course, that kind of thing. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is that you do have, I think, in the long run, a fundamental contradiction between the demand side and the capacity of the state to meet the demand. In the interior of that is the democratic question of the degree to which the state is profoundly committed to multicultural democracy and equity between our many peoples. If you imagine a serious dent in the achievement rates of Latino students in the K-14 or K-12 system, imagine then what the demand on higher ed will look like. So if we're serious about increasing access, and we're serious about increasing achievement, and we're serious about decreasing the achievement gap, you will have to address the long-term capacity investment that the state will have to make. There's no magic bullet here. There's no secret hidden in the relationships between the schools. We can cooperate, but in the end, we're talking about the need for hundreds of thousands of additional places for people to study. And absent the state's ability and willingness to make that investment, we will violate the core of the master plan. Our system will remain too narrow and too elite. And our people will suffer more than just their personal disappointments as they cannot get in. One could predict confidently more tensions in the social fabric of our communities, the suppression of economic growth, an acceleration of what we already fear to be the slow decline of the quality of our collective lives. I think I'll stop.
Thank you very much. For those of us that are in the Senate, Ms. Liu and I are sitting in a committee for budget where we're talking about cutting people's money that are living on $634 a month. We're talking about cutting off services for people that rely on medical services, people that are relying on dental services, people that are relying on eyeglasses, people that are relying on somebody to come and take them and turn them over. So when you talk about education, I understand the thing, but there's other components to the budget, there's other components to life. There's other components to things that we have to do, and unfortunately, when they elected us, they said you get to make the really good choices, and you get to make the really hard choices.
That's why I said it was long term.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, Mr. Murphy, what you said at our first hearing, the foundational hearing, still reverberates. And that is, you cautioned us not to modify the master plan in order to come to terms with the current, hopefully evanescent, current economic recession. And so what we really, the service we, I think, in this committee need to perform for the legislature and for the people of California is to determine what are the long-term needs for the state and the people in terms of higher education, rather than what are the needs as harsh as the reality is now, rather than what are the needs this year. But we really need to understand what the system, what the people need from the system, what the state needs from the system. And it's been a sobering cycle of testimony today, ending now, except for public comment, but ending now and beginning with a demographic assessment this morning, which some of you may have heard about the retiring of the baby boomers, so that for the first time perhaps in California's history, in order to meet the economic needs of the state, at all levels of education, higher education, both from advanced degrees to certificates for technical employment. We need to educate our homegrown population. And the question is, well, that is the conundrum. But it is also not only a matter of economic growth, as you said, it's a matter of social stability as well. Senator Hancock.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ruskin. And I want to thank you all for your testimony. And again, because, is it Dr. Murphy? Brian Murphy testimony did resonate with me. It reflected very much the comments that I tried to make in the beginning of today. We have choices. We can give up on the master plan. We can tweak the master plan in some ways to help us through the current crisis and hope that those do not become permanent accommodations to adversity. We can reaffirm the master plan and set about trying to create the conditions for access and excellence. The things that made our state the envy of the country and the world a few decades ago. And I would just like to point out once more to us that we, in fact, are faced with choices, and they are choices. About 3 years ago, I heard Alice Rivlin, who used to be the Director of Management and Budget, speak about our economy, and she said, you know, it was kind of chilling for me at the time. She said, you know, we are not a struggling, developing nation caught in the clutches of the World Bank. We are the richest society in the world. We have choices to make about how we grow our economy and give our people opportunity. And now, of course, we are getting to look more every day like a developing country caught in the clutches of various economic structures. But I think the charge of this committee is going to be, how do we get several 100,000 more slots? Our master plan was developed when the population of the state was half of what it is now. We have not doubled our capacity. And think of all the people we would put to work teaching and learning. And, you know, it makes no better sense than to do it now when we want many of our young people not to be out in a labor market that is declining when there are no jobs for almost anybody. We want them to be improving their skills so as the economy comes back, we're ready to grow the economy. But, you know, I just thank you all for bringing to us what you need and what you have to offer us. It's a very timely discussion, and I want to thank the chairs for putting
First of all, a couple of questions or comments from Mr. Murphy, and then some general comments. You talk about how your facilities are so strained, Mr. Murphy. I worked on a college campus for 26 years, was president of the Community College District for 8 years, and you could have easily rolled a tank down the campus on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon and not hit anybody.
I, too, worked at a community college for 9.5 years before I was a trustee for 5 years, and you could have driven a Mack truck between the hours of 2 and 5 before the night classes came, where nobody was on campuses.
So maybe your campus is an outlier, something different from what the rest of us have experienced. But there is, I guarantee you, capacity at many of our colleges and universities, just not at the times that are most convenient for faculty and students. So let's put that aside.
Who's left?
Let's leave that on the table.
Yeah. Okay. Let's leave that on the table. So clearly there is room to offer other classes, bachelor's degree classes, let's say, at a community college. There is room in the facility. Next comes the cost. You pose a tremendous issue. I mean, you don't want to offer four-year degrees at a community college at the expense of the traditional community college mission, or by taking dollars away from the CSU or the UC. What if you could offer four-year degrees in those facilities that are vacant many hours of the week? If you could offer four-year degrees without taking anything away from the UC or the CSU or the traditional community college mission. If you offered those at a fee that made them self-sustaining, those programs, like two of our five panelists do right now, if we could do that, would you object to doing that?
I don't think anybody would object to the fundamental principle that you want to use the capital outlay you've already made, the sunk costs that are already there, but you raise two very important issues. When you say the faculty and students, as if it were only and simply a matter of convenience, it would in fact take a fair amount of work to find out how many faculty you could deploy, for what cost, because there would be a significant cost by definition, and the students who would come.
Well, I would posit that at this particular juncture in our history, you would find many folks who are now part-time faculty driving around the county trying to make a living who would be happy to teach classes at times that are not the usual times. And I would posit that at a time when places like San Diego State are slamming the doors shut on local place-bound students, you would find plenty of students who are willing to take classes on Friday afternoons or Friday evenings if they were offered. I'm not saying that's a panacea. I'm just saying, folks, you know, the Titanic is sinking to some extent. Let's not say, well, we've done it this way for 50 years, so let's do it this way for 50 more. That's all I'm saying.
If I could add one comment, not to interrupt, but we do exactly what you're talking about in the private post-secondary industry. I have classes that meet from 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock, Monday through Friday. I have classes that meet on Saturday, and we also meet on Sunday.
Let me suggest two things.
And when it comes to finding faculty, that's not a problem in this economy.
There are two issues. Our schedule is roughly the same as his, and I think we start at 7:30, except for one class that starts at 5:30, but the peculiarity of that I will leave aside. If what you're talking about is the provision of faculty, that is to say the search and payment of faculty on some other basis than reimbursement by the state of California, and that is to say legislative relief around the boundaries of how we operate, all three of the systems operate, that's clearly another conversation. What I'm saying is you would have to analyze with some fair precision exactly, or even with some order of magnitude, forget precision, how much capacity could really be generated. I don't think that what anybody's arguing for is traditionalism. There's just a wish that we not be romantic, that we could widely expand it without some deeply significant cost increase, that's all.
The privates can do it. The privates are doing it. We can do it on public facilities, and we're just not. Anyway, general comment, thank you. The testimony we've gotten here today has been, I think, incredibly useful to us. I look forward to these continued conversations. I thank Chairs Negretti-McLeod and Ruskin for convening us.
At this point, let me, you know what I'd like to ask is the panelists, unless you have to leave, and then please feel free to remain. I'm going to, with your permission, ask the public to comment at this point, and who knows, we may propose certain questions or comments. Sure. Anyone who wishes to make a public comment, I understand senators may have to leave to resume budget hearings. But anyone who wishes to make a public comment, please come to the microphone and just give us, if you wish.
Just stand. Okay.
Give us, if you wish, how many people wish to make public comment? Can you raise your hand? We have only a few. So I think, oh, thank you. Just if you wish, give us your name and any affiliation and your comments.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nancy Vandell, and I'm a volunteer legislative advocate speaking on behalf of the nearly 1 million members of the California State PTA, the nation's oldest and largest nonprofit organization advocating on behalf of children and youth. The California State PTA believes that California's system of public education, including community colleges, the California colleges, the California State University, and the University of California, plays a critical role in the economic and cultural vitality of our state and nation. Investment in students' post-secondary education enriches the lives of all Californians and provides skilled workers to meet the needs of California's global economy. PTA strongly believes that every student who meets the established eligibility requirements must be allowed access to the appropriate level of California's system of higher education. Financial hardship should not prohibit eligible students from attending institutions of higher education, and efforts must be made to provide financial assistance to all students. PTA supports increasing the number and amount of state and federal grants for students facing financial hardships in spite of the economy, simplifying the application process for all forms of financial aid, improving the access to information on post-secondary financial aid, and expanding access to in-state tuition levels for California residents. We further believe that schools and colleges should work together to facilitate articulation from secondary to higher education. PTA recognizes that California's institutions of higher education are vital to preparing qualified educators for California public schools. Californians must ensure that public schools of education have the resources to produce the teachers and administrators needed to staff pre-kindergarten through grade 12 public schools and to prepare experts in the field of teaching and learning. California State PTA urges adequate funding for California's system of higher education to ensure that eligible students have access to a higher education and that California provides the qualified educators needed for our public schools. Funding cuts are currently preventing qualified students from enrolling in our universities and colleges and are causing renowned professors to leave our public institutions to move to other states. And we are unlikely to turn this around without a plan for sufficient stable revenues over the long term. We are concerned that funding cuts to higher education, as well as K-12 education, impairs the state's ability to produce graduates in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields, and this threatens our ability to compete in the global economy. A priority for PTA is eliminating the achievement gap. In today's technical environment, it is essential for every student to have an opportunity for some type of higher education, whether an AA degree or a bachelor's degree. We applaud the Multiple Pathways report developed by the CDE in response to Assembly Bill 2648, authored by Assemblymember Bass. However, the additional cost of implementing the report's recommendations in high schools is $1,500 per pupil. Academic counselors are also necessary to help high school students complete necessary requirements for college. However, counselors are rapidly disappearing from our middle and high schools as budgets are cut. As you write your master plan, we urge your panel to recommend a change in the funding mechanisms for California's system of higher education so that sufficient stable funding is provided to allow all eligible students of all demographics be able to access an affordable and quality college education. We also hope that you will include recommendations for college and career preparation in our high schools so that students moving into our post-secondary system are prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that each person limit his or her remarks to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'll try to do my remarks in under 3 minutes. And given the lateness of the day, I'm first to say that we'll align our comments. I'm Jonathan Lightman, Executive Director of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges, and certainly we align with the testimony of Student Senate President Reed Milburn and her comments about fees. What I'd like to discuss just very briefly is in your role of re-examining the master plan as state legislators and what you want to see from the state, that you may want to spend some time thinking about the appropriate functions of the state versus the locals in the community colleges. Specifically, there's many discussions here about transfer and how we can improve the transfer process, and also discussing the continuum from taking a student who needs basic skills and moving them to a point where they are ready for transfer and ultimately receive an upper division education and perhaps a graduate education. Part of that entails a minimum level of counselors per student. Another part of that is having appropriate student services. There have been numerous discussions in the Budget Committee and with the administration in terms of our student service programs. Should they exist at the local level? Should the locals have the ability to raid their budgets? For instance, the EOPS program. Should that be a matter of local control, or should that be a matter of a state priority? We would submit that that is the type of program that should be a state priority, insofar as some of the functions are of statewide importance, particularly the bridge to the high schools, the counseling function, and the assistance with students of certain economic and educational disadvantages. The other discussion that you may want to engage in terms of particularly the community colleges, is whether some of the policies are leading towards a demographic population that favors strictly the 18 to 24-year-olds. As you heard earlier from the Public Policy Institute of California, we're going to be facing a shortage of 1 million workers lacking a college degree. Given the fact that this 18 to 24-year-old bubble is waning, we're going to need policies that reach out to the 25 to 65-year-olds. How do we get them back into college, maybe one class at a time, ultimately to achieve their educational goals and to reach that 1 million mark, if we can go there, as a state? And so I would caution you, in terms of looking towards the future, that we don't favor policies that are limited to the 18 to 24-year-olds, but that also reach out to that 25 to 65-year-old demographic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Next, please.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for the time. My name is Alex Pater. I'm a member of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. I attend 3 colleges, two community colleges and 1 CSU. When reviewing the master plan, I would highly encourage you to look at the long-term plans and goals of higher education and those that fall beneath that. I believe that it's important to specialize each of the 3 higher education segments, particularly the community college system. Requires us to work with basic skills that we didn't receive in K through 12, transfer classes, and vocational education that is required for the workforce of the 21st century. The CSUs are also required to provide higher education for the bachelor requirements that is also going to be required for the upcoming century. And the UCs are also required to fulfill an academic and research role, as well as training the future doctors, lawyers, and other scientists that is needed to keep California competitive. So I believe that the key issue in the further discussions will be accessibility and making sure that we have an educational workforce that is capable of competing in a global market in the future. And again, thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Davina Khanna, and I'm a first year at UC Santa Cruz. I graduated from high school last year, and when I was applying for schools, the school that I wanted to go to was a UC, mainly because I knew it was an excellent education at a cost that I believed to be affordable. Since middle school and high school, my peers and I did all the things that we were supposed to do. We took the advanced placement courses, we fulfilled our A to G requirements, we took the SAT, we took the ACT, we fulfilled our personal statements, we did all the things that we were supposed to do, and I believe that we achieved the same scores that students before us had. However, we were shocked when we received rejection letter after rejection letter because of admittance cuts. And it was very frustrating for us. So we kept our heads up high, and some of us chose to go to community colleges, and some of us chose to go to Cal State colleges. However, I was shocked when I heard that 40,000 students wouldn't be accepted into a Cal State college. That scares me because those students are now forced to go to a community college. I live across the street from De Anza Community College. I have friends that are doing the TAG program, which is an excellent program, who would like to go to a UC, however, have difficulty getting into classes because there are so many students that trickle into that program. It's scary for them. I've taken a class at De Anza College, and what's great about it is that it's 35 students. However, I'm hearing now that class sizes are increasing to 60 or 70, and to me that's not okay. I don't think that a student can get the kind of classes that they need in order to be successful and be able to transfer later on. I come from the Silicon Valley. I was born and raised there. When I graduate from UC Santa Cruz, I'd like to go back to the Silicon Valley and contribute to that community. As you heard this morning, to live in the Silicon Valley, it's almost essential to achieve a bachelor's degree in a technological field. It's essential. So for students who weren't able to get into college, for them it's very difficult to stay in the Silicon Valley. I consider myself very, very blessed to go to UC Santa Cruz. I love my school. I love the people there. However, I find it frustrating that my class size is 400 students and a 40-person discussion for a class that I need to ace in order to declare my major. I find it frustrating that because of budget cuts, I can't go to the library on a Saturday to study. So I hope that these are things that you will take into consideration, and I wish you best of luck, and thank you for your time.
I would just like to respond to something that was just said. I agree with you. I also live in Silicon Valley, and I think what you were discussing was the high cost of living there. But I want to just say that sometimes when we're discussing the needs for workforce development, we emphasize technical or technological careers and training, and I think we need to do that. We need to have that consideration because technology has been transformed, and many of the higher skilled, globally competitive jobs will require those kinds of preparations. But I think it's important to recognize, and I'm not sure at which hearing we may want to bring this out, that there are other jobs and other professions that are equally important. We have a tendency to forget the arts, a tendency to forget humanities, and I'm glad to say that it is still possible to live in the Bay Area without having a job that's technologically based. So I think we need to have understand the particular needs for workforce development, but still maintain a broad view of what's essential for good quality of life in a society.
May I respond to that?
Not necessary. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Claudia Maganga. I'm a second year at UC Santa Cruz. I'm also a sociology double majored with politics combined with Latin American Latino studies. So thanks to that, I'll be staying an extra year probably with another loan. But I think I just really want to emphasize the importance in what Dr. Murphy was saying with we really, really need more campuses. It's ridiculous that we have 10 UCs and that we expect to remain accessible. It's such an important institution to be at, and it's so lucky, and I'm lucky to be there. I know I am. But in the master plan, its emphasis is accessibility, and I think that we need to retain that, and we need to look for new sources of revenue to make that possible now. We're in different times, and I respect that several people have worked in education, but right now we're at a crisis because changes haven't been made in the past to meet this point right now. And yeah, I just really think that we need I'm also on board for University of California Students Association, and every year we do try our best to bring new solutions to the table and to work with legislators to bring more funding to education. And I think we haven't been as successful in the past as we need to be now, and I think we really need legislators to start working with us. If they say that they want to bring education, make it a priority, we need legislators who work with students to really find these revenues, not just ask us to bring solutions and say, oh, what can you do, or what do you have to say? Well, work with us to find the solutions, because we know our side and you guys know your side, and I think it's important that we work together to come up with the solutions that will be feasible and that will pass in a state like California, and to really bring real solutions and to make this higher ed in California remain the best that it could be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I said there were a few minutes left. I'm John Tarjan, the chair of the Academic Senate for the CSU and formerly chair of ICAS. And since I'm joined here by Dr. Harry Pohl from the UC and Dr. Jane Patton from the community colleges, I wanted to offer the support of the faculty to give expert testimony or to help in any way we can in your hearings, and also to see if you had any questions of us since we're here. Any of the panel members, the two who are still here?
I can't think of anything right at the moment.
All right. Well, just know that the faculty of all three segments of public higher education stand ready to assist you in any way we can.
Thank you, and I appreciate you both coming here today to attend and stay informed about what we're doing, even though you weren't giving direct testimony. I do appreciate your presence. Thank you. I have a question. We have 5 more minutes, so we might as well use it. Any of you can answer this. Looking down the road, how do we plan for, as one of the witnesses just asked, just commented, how do we look at increased facilities? Obviously, we have, if we need more spaces, there are 2 ways to do it. There's probably more than 2 ways, but 2 come to mind. One is creating more spaces at existing infrastructure, and the other is creating additional infrastructure, which of course means an entirely new operating budget for that new infrastructure. Looking down the road, what will be necessary, do you think, in terms of actual new infrastructure, new campuses?
I'll start, and
can you move the mic next to you? Or are you next to the mic? You know.
All right. I'll start, and I think what we can do is to look back to the past in terms of the time periods when the population of California was growing significantly and there were no new campuses. I'll take just for a second the University of California, where I think between about 1965 and when UC Merced opened a few years ago, there were no campuses. You know, in the CSU, there have been campuses that have grown out of other facilities, Fort Ord, Camarillo, et cetera, and those facilities have been there. I think it's a combination of recognizing that there will need to be more campuses, but at the same time, making sure that the existing campuses make full utilization of the facilities, as were suggested earlier, as well as to assist faculty in improving their ability to provide distance education. So I think it's a combination of those things and not any one.
If I could ask President Murphy a question. You had, in the spirited conversation with Assemblyman Block, I guess this raises a passion. You had mentioned, what did I do with that sheet? Oh, you had mentioned the concept of legislative relief for traditional costs. Can you go into that in relation to the questions that Assemblyman Block was raising?
2 thoughts. One thing that the committee could do, and I realize that the state lacks staffing itself to do a lot of the research work that is sometimes required by these things, but one of the things that your staff could do will be to work with the organizations represented by my colleagues here on my right to find out what the current capacity of the private and independent sector is. When we did this work in the 80s, there was, how shall I want to put this, casual talk that the private and independent sector had unused capacity. It was worth exploring. It gives you some sense of the dimensions of how many spaces would be available under their most dramatic expansion plans. I'm not saying that with an edge of skepticism. I'm just saying it with an edge. You need to have some realistic assessment of what's doable there. Secondly, there has to be some analysis of the cost basis upon which non-public institutions operate. And the thing that I was referring to very specifically is that in community colleges all over the state, the question of what to do and how to reach the students who are not getting to our doors is an open conversation. So that how we can offer degree courses at cost is now an open question, because currently we don't. For me to offer through the equivalent of extension courses for credit means to fully cost them, pay for the faculty, et cetera, and to do that requires could require legislative intervention. It would also require exploring whether it was a good idea, in principle, to do it. So when I mentioned 2,300 persons not getting a single class, it's not like they've got someplace else they can go. Again, with all due respect, there probably are not 2,300 spaces available at your university. And were there to be 2,300 at yours, it would be at a cost different than it is to them now at De Anza. So were De Anza to go into the for-profit provision of credit would require some exploration and some really serious review of what the current legislative boundaries were. It was that specifically that I was referring to.
It would be an unusual concept that would have to consider its policy ramifications.
Quite.
You would have essentially a two-tiered process on on the same campus, and
I'm not advocating as much as looking very straightforwardly at what the options would be.
I was just trying to explore it a little further in the limited time we had here. Yes. Yeah. Oh.
Go ahead, sir. Okay. I think there is the possibility of the public and the private sector working together as far as facilities. Obviously, there are cost differences. Again, we're in a unique geographic location where there are just not a lot of higher education institutions. In fact, we are the only private residential liberal arts type of college north of Sacramento until you get all the way to Eugene, Oregon. But we have rented space at 2 different community colleges in the North State for extension sites. With the launching of our nursing program, until a new science and nursing building is constructed, we'll actually be using the facilities at Shasta College at their new university center that was designed not just to serve the community college, but the whole higher education community in the North States. So I think that kind of synergy is very, very possible and is a positive thing.
I know we're short on time. One of the things that when you talk about what can be done going forward and the utilization of existing infrastructure, I think that is one of the things that sets private post-secondary apart, is we always use the maximum space available. Prime example would be one of our dental assisting classes. We will start out with an 8 to 12 session, and when that session fills, we'll put in a 12 to 4, and then we'll put in a 4 to 8, and then we'll put in a 6 to 10, and we'll put in a Saturday, we'll put in a Sunday. And what we have found is in our sector, because we are filling a void that is not being filled just based on the way the system is set up, and we are providing it at cost, we're still getting the students into the building because they can't get into anywhere else. The 2 junior colleges in my area, San Bernardino Valley College and Riverside City College, have both indicated that they may have to completely cancel their summer sessions this year due to budget constraints. And I know I'm dating myself when I say when I went to the junior college, it was absolutely free. I paid $4, and I thank you for that. But I do believe and I know it would seem foreign to a lot of the individuals that attend the UCs and the CSUs, but I think as a state and as a system, we are going to have to provide things at cost if we're going to provide the workforce necessary to take us forward.
So did you say you provide your classes? Well, it wouldn't be at cost, though. I mean, you're a for-profit.
We're a for-profit school, so we're actually providing it at cost plus a profit to us.
Right.
Correct. And we're still full. And I have plenty of capacity.
Right. And of course, one of the reasons you're able to do that is because of the Cal grants and the Pell grants, right? And still to do that while your student body includes significant numbers of disadvantaged students.
That is correct.
Otherwise, you would be catering to you would be catering to a different universe of students?
Typically, the population within the private post-secondary, for instance, on a regular basis, we're about 46% minority, disadvantaged, lower income. They do use a Cal Grant, they do use a Pell Grant. However, in my nursing program, for instance, my nursing program, you must obtain approximately $60,000 in private funding. Regardless of Cal Grant, regardless of Pell Grant, regardless of your Title IV, you still must obtain $60,000 in private funding. And the only reason I don't start more people per 10 weeks is due to the limitation in the credit market today. So of the 500 people that apply every 10 weeks, about half of them pass the test. And of the half that pass the test, about 1/3 are able to obtain the financing necessary, but they are doing it on their own privately.
What percentage of the $60,000 for the, I guess that's not per year, that's for the entire certificated program?
It's a entire bachelor's degree in nursing, yes.
What percentage of that is financed by loans from the private sector?
100% of that.
I see. All right.
The other part of their tuition is paid for through their Title IV funding, which is through Pell Grant, Cal Grant, and student loans.
And do you have, this is something that would be interesting to me, do you have placement statistics on
the nursing program so far? If you pass the NCLEX, there's a nursing shortage.
So, I mean, well, do you have statistics then on the passing of that test?
The two campuses so far that have graduates are averaging 89%.
Of passage of the test?
Of the NCLEX. 83 at one campus and 89 at the other.
All right. Okay. Any final comments, gentlemen? This has been a fascinating... oh, I do have one final question. Because we could do this for a few hours, but not really. Don't worry, I'm not that serious. My scheduler is probably going, wait a minute, you can't do that. But Dr. Murphy made a statement about the distance learning, about electronic learning still requiring labor costs that are commensurate with learning in the classroom. And I've heard reports recently that as more sophisticated appraisals are made of electronic learning and distance learning, which I guess is usually the same, but that people are beginning to decide that it's the combination of classroom learning and distance learning that is really has efficacy. Can you comment on that, just in terms of can distance learning under certain with certain parameters increase access, or is it? I mean, is it likely to induce? It may not lower costs, but could it induce different or more or additional students to participate?
I think that it could. The costs per faculty member wouldn't change that much, but you could get higher class enrollment. But as you say, while there are some programs that are all online, there's some online master's programs totally, but I think what a lot of people want is a combination of the online and the in-person, so that the efficacy that you're talking about is there, because you lose something if you don't have these periodic kinds of interactions with a faculty member other than online grading papers, this kind of thing.
And then to the degree in which you have online costs that that necessitate monitoring by a faculty person, that is even more intensive, more labor intensive, because you have to respond individually to each person who's online.
Absolutely.
So I guess one can consider using either providing that where possible, or using distance learning for less for efforts that do not demand the same amount of interactivity, where the interactivity might come in the classroom. I'm just thinking out loud with you. Dr. Murphy?
Yes.
One comment regarding this. You're stepping into a really important conversation that I think this state and many of us in higher education are going to have, which is an understanding of what method of engagement works for which students in which context, rather than, now that we've got distributed learning and asynchronous learning and online learning, somehow it's going to be an answer. to the problem of either capacity or instruction or access. I find intriguing, and I've had this conversation in Cupertino, that Apple Computer, devoted as it is to asynchronous dissociated distribution of information and the like, refers to its home space as a campus. And when you talk to them about the most productive place where their engineers design the things where you don't have to get together, it's arguably the cafeteria on their campus.
But the real physical cafeteria.
Yeah, the real physical place. Yeah. Because I don't think and it's an odd thing to be simultaneously old-fashioned and conservative, namely believing in face-to-face engagement of faculty and students, and critically students with each other. That may end up being more radical, a set of proposals, than its alternative. If its alternative is the distribution, if you will, of information through all of the high-tech capacity that we have without the face-to-face. And just saying, on campus after campus, I think everyone in the CSU and everyone in the private universities, certainly in the community colleges and at the UC, they're exploring the mix of these things that reach out to students. But at the heart of it is this question of how and in what ways we engage students. They appear to be engaged, and again, depending upon who they are, where they live, how they work, what their age is, a whole variety of demographic differences. So if you want to really explore that, I think you'll find a lot of folks, particularly within the Academic Senate representatives who just spoke, they're folks who are devoting a very significant amount of time to exploring these questions.
All right, thank you. At this point, I think we will conclude. I thank everyone very much. The hearing is adjourned.